when you work on combating hate, you cannot think of having one actor that in isolation resolves the problem. It cannot be social media platforms when it's about hate speech online. It cannot be the state or the authorities alone, and it cannot be civil society. You need all hands on deck. You need all partners to work together, and I understand that that was also one of the aims of the Butterfly Effect project, to bring together the knowledge, the capacity, and the different perspective of civil society organizations, and put them in connection when relevant with public authorities. Maybe there's one thing and one dimension that we want to stress and that we've learned as being crucial in this particular area of work to bring about change. And this is trying to go beyond the ones that are already motivated, those actors that are already working in this field, that are activists or that have a role in combating hate, racism, discrimination as part of their work. And that means opening up to society, to citizens at large, and possibly through experiences like of participation, even in schools, by involving students directly, but exploring the possible change that might come by letting people, citizens, ordinary citizens, which can and should and must have different views, but can be brought together and be around the circle and discuss about how to tackle hate, polarization, and extremism, which is affecting our living together, which is affecting the cohesion of our society. So it's a common problem that everyone probably perceives, but perhaps needs to be discussed according to rules of civility of conversations, non-violent communication, and similar approaches that can really, through conversation, through discussions, bring about change.
Well, the thing is that the job of civil society is to think and plan ahead of the politics, I would say, of the political parties and of the elections. And what we can do is try to affect the policymakers and the decision makers in thinking about the issues that we see are problematic in the society. That being said, I mean, it would be illusionistic to expect that all of our suggestions will be implemented, but we can hope for we should hope for the best and prepare for those politicians and those institutional setups that will be more favorable, hopefully in the future. Well, some of our suggestions could be implemented. So our work is not in vain in that regard, I would say.
So, and what do you believe about the policies that we need, and how can we address all these challenges that we have today?
Well, I believe that on the level of the European Union, but also on the level of the member states, we should have more human rights approach, more human rights conscious policies and measures across all the issues that we see in our societies, especially when it comes to the things related to the intolerance, hate crime, hate speech, anti-discrimination, and all of those measures should be comprehensive. It is not enough just to target. We often see our societies and our states coming out with firefighter measures. They see a fire somewhere and they try to extinguishing. While it would be probably better to think in terms of investing in the social infrastructure to address all of these issues from the standpoint of view of the social inclusion, of the investment in a better, more solidary society, to think about how to make our schools more appropriate for a changing world where we are living, to provide the means for the kids, to be able to get comfortable with diversity opposed to what we have with today's generation. And more importantly, kind of to stop with this politics of division that has been a dominant force in the last few cycles within the EU elections. But I mean, we are witnessing what is happening in the United States now, where this is the main bell.
There's so many challenges in confronting hate speech, of course, because it feels like it's all just going so fast, and so going forward, the way technology is developing so quickly, it's going to be really a challenge for us to keep up with that. The other thing is that with the polarization forces currently at play, globally as well as regionally, nationally, locally, all the codes around hate speech for all different groups are somehow shifting, and it feels like there's various attempts to move those boundaries of the limits between hate speech and free speech, and there's some sort of recalibrating or attempts to recalibrate our understanding of that, which I think will be very challenging for all of us going forward to be discerning and complete in terms of context, intent, impact, etc. And then the third thing that we're extremely aware of inside our organization, where we are monitoring hate speech online, but also confronting hate rhetoric offline, is the psychological pressures that it takes to be exposed over and over and over again to some of the most extreme forms of vitriolic, toxic language, and how important it is for us to work across communities in this effort, because, for example, a Jewish person monitoring anti-Semitism, it's so heavy for them that actually it can be more effective and more a solidarity that actually then they're monitoring other forms of hatred. And we're really looking, for allies who can understand the nature of each hostility so that we can support each other by monitoring others' forms of hatred as a way also to provide some psychological protection for each other and support. So that's sort of what I'm going to be offering in my speech today, and I hope that as the butterflies we are, that we choose the right winds of change going forward.
I think we need both actions taken from the platforms, the digital platforms, in order to ensure a more safe, I would say, environment. We need action from states. I think some regulation is needed. Of course, the challenge is always to regulate while preserving freedom of expression. So that's something very important for journalists. And then I also believe that journalists themselves can help, by the way they work. And I can tell you that today journalists are working in a more transparent way. There is, it's important for them to be accountable of the way they work. I think that values as inclusiveness, transparency, diversity are more important than ever. And I think that media should also take into consideration these values. That means that we need more diverse newsrooms. It's also a response to the fight to hate speech and discriminatory narratives. I really believe that diversity in the media and inclusiveness in the media is a kind of antidote to hate speech.
I think we all have to do our part of the job, so put all these pieces together in a kind of bigger mosaic. So today I think that you managed, for example, to bring really very interesting, very important perspectives of people working outside and inside the project. And I believe that we have to simply push on and try to stand our ground and continue with this kind of work in the future as well. None of the projects not one single project can solve everything, but we can always work together, and we can work together continuously in order to represent the interests of our citizens.
And what I focus on racism is I do workshops in schools and I talk about language discrimination with students with like 11 years and up to university. And the main thing I experience is that there are different narratives that students encounter based on their language or languages, I might say. They experience like direct racism, like stop speaking Bosnian, stop speaking Turkish, or another language, stop speaking Arabic, because this is an Austrian school. So they like experience like this direct hate speech. And then there are a lot of narratives that are being used to kind of persuade children and students to not speak their language in school. So what teachers might say is something like, you know what, I like your language, I like all languages, but in order for us to be a community in school, we should agree on one language, and that is German. So I don't hate your language, I just want you to speak it in school, because there could be a misunderstanding. Someone might think you're speaking about them. So the narrative is that if you speak German, we could be a community, we could come together, but the question is, when someone speaks German, is it automatically a community? So all people, all students who have like German as a first language, are they like all friends with each other, only based on their language, or does it take more than a common language to form a community or to form inclusive classroom? So this is something I focus on in my work, to empower children, to empower the youth, I guess, to be confident with their languages and not buy into these narratives like if you speak your first language in school, it's not a problem. So the root of the problem, that there is a misunderstanding, is not in the language but in behavior. Like if you look at someone and speak about them, like if it's obvious, you can do that in German as well. Or if you don't want children to badmouth each other, then you should talk about respecting each other. And if you say, okay, speak German, you can badmouth someone in German as well. So it's like, it's like I try to empower, because a lot of parents also bought into these narratives, and they started to tell their children not to speak in their first language in school, and they use the same narratives that the teachers use. So if you speak in your first language, someone might feel excluded. So if you speak German, no one would feel excluded, but what if you don't like them? What if there no mobbing anymore? If someone speaks German, you can mob someone, you can exclude someone in German as well. So the problems students face and the problems the classroom faces is not because of language, but because in behavior, in respectful or disrespectful behavior.
The outcome is that there's still a long way to go, because there's still a long way to go. But we have also to value what has been done. What has been done with this project is very nice. For example, I'm speaking about Italy. What happened is that we identified that there is still a lot to do in schools, because students don't have spaces where they can share what happens to them, where they can share incidents related to hate speech, to discrimination and racism. For example, in Genova, where I live and where I worked with the kids thanked us that in their curriculum, in their school activity, there was some space where they can share these moments, and it it was in the place where these things happen often, so which is the school. So there's still a lot to do with the young people. There's a lot also to do about cyberbullying, about hate speech on social media. The kids showed us that there's needs to have the tools on how to use the social media in an appropriate way. Also the teachers were. We were surprised to see that they also need also to have those tools to know how to manage a class with many diversities, because now in Italy in class you have a new generation of multicultural people, and they don't know how to deal with all this new generation. So us Konji, we have also learned a lot. And sharing with other countries, sharing with Austria, Croatia, and Greece. We have learned a lot. We have acquired the tools that we need also to bring to the associations that form our network, so that we can work on a whole territory, on a whole Italian territory.
In my speech, I try to touch upon two aspects, or actually two challenges, if you want. The first one is the current climate and also the current situation we are in, which is not particularly favorable to what we try to do. Actually, it can be also quite hostile in terms of hate speech, hate crime, discrimination, targeting different groups and individuals across Europe. I'm not talking about a specific country. First of all, because the international situation is what it is, and so we have more polarization, fewer chances to get at serious debates and discussions on some topics. It's very difficult actually to take hate speech for what it is, and not as a political kind of ideological stance, from the ideological perspective. So, as we heard also, racism, discrimination, and I would say hate speech and hate crime, they are just, problems, issues that we have to face and we have to tackle. They are not, from any specific particular, political perspective. We're talking about legislations, we're talking about something we have to do. We have international conventions, we have non-binding also recommendation, but we should actually be all worrying, about this. Whereas now, because of the context we are in, we see more and more hate speech, not just in social media, I would say in public spaces, when people try also to talk about these very heated, topics, in society. So the challenge is huge, because the context is not favorable, is quite actually problematic if we want to tackle hate speech. And then we also have opportunities. But these are new opportunities. From a legal perspective, we have more documents, more legislation, the Digital Services Act, in order to tackle online hate speech, and also to be more effective, and make platforms more accountable on what they do. We have recommendations from the Council of Europe on hate speech and hate crime. This is not binding, but in some countries is already producing some positive effect, i.e. raising human rights standards in some countries. We have other pieces of legislation on AI. Also, we know now with the European Commission is actually creating binding standards for equality bodies in different countries. So we have opportunities. Now we have more tools, more legislation, more competence and more knowledge about these issues, these topics. But of course, civil society organizations, first of all, need to work together more often and more effectively, not to spread resources, and to actually in order to maximize resources also from human resources, not just funds and grants. Second, they should be taken into account more often by institutions and state actors. And third, of course, we need to be more regional, more creative also in providing young generations with, a new approach to hate speech and hate crime and discrimination. So actually taking into account their voices, their languages, their practices, being aware that, some people, if they are young, if they belong to a marginalized community or racialized community, they don't feel safe right now. They don't feel safe to protest, to dissent. We need to create safer spaces, for people to be able to actually to say what they want to say about these issues and in general about human rights, and to defend human rights more often and more evenly. And so my talk was actually to try to find a balance between problems, issues which are real, because the context is what it is, and also hate speech, is becoming, is spreading even more, on topics that were not there 1 year, 2 years ago. And now we also have, nevertheless, more opportunities, more funds, more chances to collaborate and to work together. And also the butterfly effect, project proves that it's possible not just to have reports, to have monitoring activities, but also to have an effect on working practice of different cores of people, different constituencies, and then enable them really to do a further step in order to fight, to prevent and fight discriminations in society.